Get ready to
Welcome
rant.
back to the Unfiltered Rant podcast, where we read it, we rant about it, and most importantly, we do not sugarcoat anything. I'm your host, Tony, and tonight we're going to crack open another episode of the Unfiltered Rant. And before anybody comes running into the comments, I am only about 80 pages into Glint, okay? It's not my final review, and it's not me saying the entire book is terrible, and it's not me saying Raven Kennedy suddenly forgot how to write. This is me talking about my experience with the opening section of Glint after genuinely enjoying Guild. And right now, I have one request from my girl AUREN. Please, for the love of all things gold, get out of your damn head, because we gotta talk. I really enjoyed Guild. That's what makes this really frustrating. You know, Raven Kennedy took the mythos surrounding King Midas and twisted it into this dark fantasy world built around captivity and power, possession, manipulation, and this woman who has been conditioned into believing that a cage can somehow represent protection. I'm gonna be honest, it was dark and interesting and psychologically compelling. And I finished Guild wanting to see where Kennedy was going to take AUREN next. And Glint certainly starts with the premise that sounds like it should immediately create tension. Like, she's no longer sitting inside Midas's golden castle as a prisoner. She's now a prisoner of the Fourth King's army in a carriage. And she is traveling toward a potential confrontation involving King Midas. She's surrounded by Commander Rip and a bunch of unfamiliar soldiers. She doesn't know what they're going to do with her. She's essentially becoming a political bargaining chip capable of helping to prevent or ignite war. And that's literally how the publisher positions this book. AUREN is traveling with the Fourth Kingdom's army toward confrontation while wrestling with captivity surrounding, with survival grief and what freedom, actually means. And I'm going to be honest, that sounds like a recipe for an explosive sequel. Except I'm 80 pages into Glint, and I'm sitting here thinking, where is the explosion? Because the first 80 pages are boring. It's contemplating, and then contemplating some more. And the AUREN inner monologue problem is one of my biggest issues with how this book opens. During those first couple major stretches of AUREN's first two POVs after the Queens, because the Queens is the first POV when you crack open this book, and then there's back-to-back AUREN POVs. There is a lot of overly descriptive, useless, boring, droning on of internal monologue. Like, AUREN thinks about being a prisoner, then she thinks about how she feels about being a prisoner. Then she thinks about what being a prisoner means, then she thinks about Midas. Then it's about what Midas means to her, then it's about the Fourth Kingdom, then she analyzes how she feels about him. Then we get descriptions of what's around her, then we go back into her head, and I'm sitting here waiting for somebody to actually do something. And I understand what Kennedy's attempting to do. Like, AUREN has spent years being psychologically conditioned by Midas. And I understand you can't realistically walk her out of one cage and immediately become a sword-wielding fantasy heroine screaming, "I'm free!" You know? It really wouldn't make a lot of psychological sense. Her worldview, I understand, has to unravel gradually. But there is a difference in my world between developing a character internally and allowing internal narration to dominate the reading experience. And for right now, for me at least, the balance is real off. And apparently I'm not alone either. And this is where things got really interesting when I started looking at other reader reactions, because I like to look up reviews at this point when I get to 80 pages into a book and I'm having issues. And I found readers discussing Glint at, they said roughly 22% into the book, which is right around where I'm at right now. Their complaint was essentially, I need more dialogue and less monologue. That's what I took away from a bulk of the reviews. And they specifically talked about AUREN processing her trauma and describing what's happening around her while they waited for more actual interaction and substance. And in my mind, I'm like, thank you, I'm not the only one, because that's what I'm experiencing. I'm not saying AUREN shouldn't process her trauma. I'm saying, can she process some of it while something is happening? Like, can we have dialogue or conflict or interpersonal tension or a meaningful conversation? Or something external pushing against all this internal droning on, boring, overly descriptive, has nothing to do with the plot, internal monologue and internal processing. Because after a while, it begins feeling less like I'm traveling through the Fourth Kingdom with AUREN and more like I've been locked inside her brain without an emergency exit. And I'm going to be honest, man, over-description is really killing the momentum for me 80 pages into the book. And the descriptions are really another problem I have. Kennedy can write. I don't want to get it twisted, all right? I want to make that very clear. This isn't me saying the prose is bad. There are passages where you can absolutely see why people love her writing, But sometimes this is the problem I have with trad publishing. Sometimes good descriptive writing becomes too much descriptive writing, and the editors don't cut it. It's fluff that could be cut. I don't need every emotional reaction examined under a microscope and added to the text. It's useless. It gives no plot progression to the entire story. Um, I understand how Auren feels the first time. You don't have to keep explaining it again and again and again, and then give me another metaphor explaining the same emotional state. Eventually, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I got it. Like, she's scared. I get it. You know, she's conflicted and uncomfortable. She don't trust these people. She doesn't know what they're gonna do with her. She wants Midas. She's very confused about her circumstances. I understand. Let's move on. This book needs somebody to hit the narrative accelerator, and it's honestly, it feels anticlimactic after how Guild ended, and that's probably the word that best describes my first 80 pages so far, which is anticlimactic. Um, it's not necessarily bad either, because Guild leaves Auren in a dramatically different situation. She is literally removed from everything familiar. She's surrounded by the Fourth Kingdom. There is uncertainty surrounding Commander Rip, because he's terrifying apparently physically, and he's like grotesque and he's full-blooded Fae. You know, there is the possibility of war as well, and her entire concept of safety has been seriously disrupted. And I'm gonna be honest, that should generate immediate momentum. Instead, it pumps the brakes and it seems more interested in slowing everything down and examining Auren overly descriptive and from a psychological standpoint. And that choice has really divided readers. You know, I was like, when I'm gonna go back to the reviews for a minute. But another review described Glint as essentially Auren being captured by the Fourth Kingdom, and noted that not much else happens for substantial portions because the book concentrates on slowly breaking down Auren's attachment to Midas and developing her relationships with Rip and the others. Another reviewer simply called the pacing glacial and said most of the story remains in one general setting with Auren's character development functioning as the primary focus. And this is one of the biggest issues I have with trad publishing, especially in bridge novels, is that expository style of writing. It's overly descriptive and it doesn't move anything forward to get to the third book. Um, and apparently, this isn't just an 80-page opening issue either. This may actually be the structural philosophy of the book, which I have like really a lot of concerns about. Um, because character development doesn't automatically equal excitement. And here is where I'm going to push back against one argument I've seen. There are readers who love what Glyn is doing, and I understand kind of why. There is one highly positive review. It said the slower plot allowed Kennedy to explore Auren's emotions, trauma, and development to the point that the reviewer didn't experience the book as particularly slow, despite acknowledging that the plot itself moved more slowly. And that is completely fair. Another reviewer, praised the slow building of Auren's character and felt that her getting outside her cage finally allowed her personality and independence to begin developing. So there's like another side to this where like there's an emotional connection, but for some readers like me, the psychological development is the plot, I guess. And if you're someone who loves deeply introspective, character-driven fantasy, you might eat these chapters alive. But it does work for me, and I don't know. It's not automatically for everybody. I get it. It's not really for me, but I'm gonna keep reading because I like Kennedy's writing style. However, character development in my world still needs momentum. And character development still needs tension. And there is things that can still happen even though you are developing your character. Like, you can have dialogue, choices, consequences, relationships, conflict, action, discovery. You don't necessarily need pages upon pages of a character explaining herself to herself. Like, another thing I want to address too, Auren is starting to become insufferable in her head with how her monologue is. Um, and it's not because I dislike her as a character. I liked her in Guild. It's why I'm frustrated because there are only so many times I can listen to somebody circle the same emotional drain before I'm screaming, "Somebody hand this woman a map out of her own head." And like other readers have struggled with Auren too, so I'm not alone. And even I was looking up things on Goodreads, and there was a reviewer who disliked the book and described Auren as frustratingly naive, and they felt Kennedy spends too much time in the novel pushing her towards realizations about her captivity that take a very long time to arrive. Another review specifically noted that Glint retains some of Guild's problems with repetition and meandering, while arguing that the slow pace of Auren's growth can become frustrating. That's the word I was looking for, meandering. That's exactly what these opening chapters feel like. We're moving physically, the army is traveling, but narratively, it sometimes feels like you are standing still inside her head. But here's why I'm not giving up. And this is important. I'm still going to read Glint. I'm not going to DNF this at page 80. because there are too many readers saying that Auren's development becomes one of the strengths of the book, and I'm hoping that like there is, I would say, twists with her psychological development, and she finds out why she was imprisoned and why King Rot said that I know what you are, and explains that further. I think that'll really help me get through the book, but I don't know. There are too many people saying Commander Rip becomes a highlight, and even some reviewers who openly acknowledge that the first half doesn't contain much plot. Um, they still said they came away loving the book. One Goodreads reviewer straight up said that not much happens during the first half and characterized it as slow paced, but still felt completely gripped because of the character depth and dynamics. Another reader called the beginning drawn out and felt much of the significant action was saved for late in the novel, yet still found the book compelling enough to continue the series. So I'm gonna give Kennedy some wiggle room. Maybe this is 80 pages of setup that pays off beautifully. Maybe I'm gonna come back during the rant, stack the verdict, and say, okay, Tony at page 80 needed to shut his mouth, like that has happened before. I'm gonna be honest. I'll gladly admit that if it happens again, because I'm a little impatient in the beginning of a book. But I'm reviewing the experience I'm having right now, and right now, Glint has a very interesting situation. It has Commander Rip and political stakes. It has the Fourth Kingdom. It has Auren suddenly removed from the gilded environment that defined the first book. It has all the ingredients necessary for an exciting continuation of Guild, especially with how Glint started out with the Clint Queen's POV and her like take charge demeanor. But through approximately my first 80 pages, Raven Kennedy seems much more interested in Auren thinking about the story than allowing Auren to participate in the story, and I think that's where I'm really struggling, especially with the excessiveness of the internal monologue. The descriptions occasionally overstay their welcome. The repetition is very noticeable. The pacing is incredibly slow, and it's not really what I wanted coming out of Guild. And Auren, girl, man, please talk to another damn human being. I'm begging you. Please, I don't need another paragraph explaining the emotional architecture of the damn cage. I understand the cage. I understand Midas. I get you're conflicted. I give me Rip, give me the Fourth Kingdom and political tension and compensation, and give me something for the love of God that forces Auren's worldview to change instead of another page telling me that what the worldview currently is. Because the book still has me, and that's maybe the strangest part. I'm annoyed, but I'm curious. I hate feeling this. I hate when authors do this to me. I am frustrated, but I'm still reading, and then sometimes that's what makes an interesting reading experience because Glint hasn't lost me, not yet. Um, what it's done is making me impatient, and there's clearly something underneath all this setup. There's clearly a reason this series has the following it does, and there's enough praise surrounding Auren's eventual character development that I want to see whether all this internal narration is laying some kind of weird groundwork. Whether we're taking the scenic route to a destination we could have reached 150 pages earlier. That is the question, and that's why I'm continuing. Um, so I think my final rant is going to be Raven Kennedy. You got me with Guild. I'm still invested in Glint. I'm very interested in Rip and the Fourth Kingdom, and seeing Auren finally begin questioning what Midas has convinced her is love and protection. But right now, man, your girl is monologuing me into submission. Like, we're 80 pages in, I'm ready. Open the damn cage and the world and the plot, and somebody please, for the love of everything golden and holy, get this girl out of her own head. Because this story catches fire after this. I'll be the first one back here telling everybody that I judged the opening too harshly, but until then, these first 80 pages are getting the rant they earned. This has been the Unfiltered Rant on Glint by Raven Kennedy. It's not the final verdict, not the final rating, just a rant right now. Because around here, we don't wait until the last page to have an opinion. We read it, we question it, we argue with it, and this is why I take notes every 80 pages to do these kind of segments. Because when necessary, like now, we rant about it. All right? I'm Tony. This is the Read and Rant podcast. Embrace the rant, and Read It and Rant is out.